What if I told you that a profound mathematical secret, a concept that Western science wouldn't formally grasp for another 500 years, was hiding in plain sight on the walls of a medieval building?
Okay, let's get right into this. What you're looking at is the Darby Imam Shrine in Iran. It was built way back in 1453, and it's absolutely covered in these stunningly complex geometric patterns. Now, for centuries, people just thought, wow, beautiful decorations. But they were so wrong. These patterns contain a level of mathematical sophistication that is frankly mind-blowing.
So what is it that makes these patterns so mysterious? It's not just that they're beautiful to look at. No, it's the unique and for a long time baffling mathematical properties that are woven deep into these designs.
These patterns are called giri, which is a Persian word that means knot. And the real key to this whole puzzle is a property called aperiodicity. Now, what does that mean? Well, think about regular wallpaper. You find one repeating block, and the whole wall is just that block, over and over again. Giri patterns are the exact opposite. They can go on forever, stretching to infinity, but you will never, ever find a single core chunk of the design that simply repeats. This weird property, plus its five-sided symmetry, made it seem almost impossible to create on such a massive scale.
For the longest time, the only explanation anyone could come up with was, the classic method, the same one the ancient Greeks used, a simple compass and a ruler. But when you really stop and look at the sheer scale and perfection of these designs, that theory just starts to fall apart.
So the old idea was that artisans painstakingly drafted these huge designs with just a compass and a straight edge. But just try to picture that, the level of precision you would need to draw hundreds, maybe thousands of individual shapes across a giant wall without a single tiny error creeping in and throwing the whole thing off. It's just not practical. It would have been unbelievably tedious, and you're almost guaranteed to make a mistake somewhere. There had to be a smarter way.
And guess what? There was. Back in 2007, a couple of physicists, Peter Liu and Paul Steinhardt, they uncovered the secret. And it was so much more elegant and ingenious than anyone had ever imagined.
The huge insight was this. The artisans weren't drawing these complicated patterns from scratch at all. Instead, they were using a simple but incredibly powerful toolkit of just 5 fundamental tile shapes. That's it. Just 5. By arranging these 5 giddy tiles in different ways, they could generate all the breathtaking complexity we see on those walls.
And here's the best part. This isn't just some modern theory we're forcing onto the past. No way. The proof was found hiding in a 15th century architect's manual called the Topkapi Scroll. If you look closely, you can see faint lines on the scroll's patterns that perfectly outline these exact 5 tiles. This was their playbook. It proves they were consciously using this system.
But, finding the tiles was really only the beginning. The deepest secret wasn't the tiles themselves, it was the mind-bending mathematical ideas they unlocked when you put them all together. When you assemble these jury tiles following their specific rules, you create something modern science calls a quasi-crystal. It's a wild idea. A quasi-crystal is a pattern that has perfect, predictable order, but it never, ever repeats. It's infinitely complex and infinitely ordered all at the same time. This concept is so counterintuitive that it wasn't even formally understood in the West until the 1970s.
And this right here is what makes this discovery so incredible. You have artisans back in 1453 intuitively creating these quasi-crystalline patterns on a wall. Then you fast forward 500 years and the brilliant Oxford mathematician Roger Penrose, he's working on purely theoretical math problems, and he independently discovers the exact same geometric principles. He came up with a set of just 2 tiles that could tile a flat surface forever without repeating. We now call them Penrose tilings. These artisans had a practical solution 5 centuries before the theory even existed.
I mean, the connection is just undeniable. When you put the properties of the ancient giri patterns and modern Penrose tilings side by side, they're basically the same thing. They're both aperiodic, so they never repeat. They both have that weird 5-fold symmetry, and they're both built from a small set of basic shapes that force these non-repeating patterns to emerge. It's the same deep mathematical truth, just discovered centuries apart.
So of course, this leads us to the really big question. How much did these medieval artisans actually understand about the incredibly advanced math they were using?
Peter Liu, one of the researchers who cracked the case, frames the debate perfectly. Were these creators actual mathematicians who understood the abstract theory of quasi-crystals, or were they just brilliant craftspeople who developed an incredibly clever system because it was an easier way to get the job done? If it's the second one, that tells us something really profound about how innovation happens, that practical genius can sometimes leapfrog formal theory. But if it's the first one, well, we have to completely rethink the entire history of mathematics. So beyond being this fascinating historical puzzle, why does uncovering this 500-year-old secret really matter today? Let's kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Look, this discovery isn't just some cool historical footnote. It fundamentally changes how we see the history of math and innovation. It shows us that a culture that's often overlooked in the Western story of science was working with concepts we thought were totally modern. It proves that the road to discovery isn't always a straight line, that a craftsman's hands-on solution can be just as revolutionary as a theorist's equation. It just beautifully blurs those lines we try to draw between art, science, and technology.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a secret this deep was hidden in the patterns on a wall for 500 years, what else might be out there? What other wisdom from our past is just sitting there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to finally see it?